Welcome to a slightly less professional live stream, number 21. Gosh, I can't believe how many of these we've now done. We started doing them, I think it must have been about a year ago, and we've done an awful lot since then. Most recently, they've been actually every week, seemingly. I don't know how much longer we'll be doing that, but there we go. Mr. Slacksby, good evening to you, sir. Let me just get my video up on my own channel. Why it is not showing on my own channel? I've actually gone live. I just need to get a second device up because it's much easier to manage the comment section if I do that. Rover Joe says, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Right, just a second thing up. Pause that. And we can get the comment section up. Fantastic. There we go. Richard Hart says, good evening. Good evening to you as well, sir. As does Mark from Mark on Motoring. Good evening to you as well, sir. Oh, we've got a nice number of people on here so far. I'll just pop the chat box out because that's what we normally do. Mr. Harry Cox says good evening. Sir Depeche Mode, our resident channel celebrity, asks why we have casual things going on. I will show you why, because we are doing a shameless channel plug. And of course, as you can see here, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. Of course we don't. Just if anybody's planning on talking about that, then I just point at my own slogan, and that should silence most of the people in the comments section. Rover Joe's had a good day. Yes, I've been working on a project that some of you would have seen in the community tab. No one, I don't think anybody's quite actually asked what that's actually about yet. Cart Ravioli says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you as well. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, evening all. And Henry Hall 8538 says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you as well. Mr. Andy G, good evening to you again, sir. Andy G, one of the longest standing channel viewers, I believe. I think even more than our resident channel celebrity, Sir Depeche Mode. John Edwards says we don't talk about diesels. We do indeed not. And we don't talk about Prince Edwards, as you say. Sir Depeche Mode says, very nice merchandise. Yes, we do like our channel merchandise. There is a link to buy channel merchandise actually in most of the videos that we have, although I don't have any mugs anymore. We don't seem to have any of those. There've been no orders for them though, so maybe that's not such a bad thing. Mr. Adam Tom says, hello, sir, and all. Oh, we've got, I see we've actually got somebody who's gone up to the second level of channel membership, which you get a little badge after you've been a channel member for a certain length of time. You start on the 1996 Rover 416 SLI automatic I used to own, and then you go up to, that is the K11 Nissan Micra. We had a no budget review last month, but you've been on there for a certain time, so you gradually get different badges depending on how long you've been a channel member. Carl Ravioli says, a mantra to live by, sir. We don't talk about a certain type of fuel. Indeed, we do not. We do not talk about those on this channel. Kev Crantle says, hello and evening to all. Mr. Harry Cox says, just wait for it to come up on here. There we go. On Auto Trader, I found a Peugeot 106 with just 20,000 miles. Probably an elderly owner. Yes, that would probably be that. Bad Books, such Mark says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you, sir. Sir Depeche Mode, our resident celebrity, says, I hope I get a badge one day. You get a badge, Sir Depeche, if you become a channel member, and then you start with one badge and you progressively get different badges, because however long you've been a channel member. That's the way that tends to work. Yes, I think so far we're doing well. Um, maybe we'll talk about metros this evening. I don't know if that's a topic of conversation which some of you actually want, but that might be what we will talk about. ST says, when are you coming to Northern Ireland? I don't really know, to be honest. I've never actually been to Northern Ireland. Not been there yet. I think there's probably I think it's a plane that goes from Southampton Airport to Northern Ireland, possibly. Um, I think it's Belfast Airport. Um, Rover Joe says that reminds you of Twitch and a membership service. Yes, yes, indeed. Um, yes, that it's similar to that. I never use Twitch, but I imagine that's similar. Mr. Andy G asks, "What's my tipple today?" I'm afraid we have this lager from Tesco. It might be not. It might be bad. I don't know. It might be terrible. That's quite possible, but we shall open it up and have a try. It was nice and cold. That's always a good start. Mm. There we go. John Edwards says a 106 with 20,000 miles. I'm looking for screwdriver marks for the odometer. I think 106s did have sort of physical um, mileometers. I don't think they were digital ones. I think they were actual kind of mechanical ones. So yeah, maybe screwdriver marks on those. I passed my test in a 1.1 Saxo with no power steering, so I know what they like to drive because they're virtually the same as a Saxo. Tripe Munger says, "Good evening to one and all. Good evening to you as well, sir." Carl Ravioli says, "The 106s are like the Rover Metros, low margin old owners." Well, the ones that exist now maybe are. I mean, there's not actually that many 106s left because um, they tended to sort of be quite cheap cars that sort of rusted a bit and disappeared. Like a lot of things of that era. But you could name loads of things around there. Um, uh, Mr. Adam Tom says, "Bitter Ashford, I love Hope and Johnny Lager." Not really a bitter person myself. Um, I do um, I do prefer lager. Mm, it's all right. Put that down for a second. Okay. ST says, "What's the worst French car ever?" Ooh, that's a difficult question. Um, had some suggestions here. Mr. Saxby says it's for Citroen C3 Pluriel. That's a very good suggestion. Quite a pointless car. Not sure I'm very fond of the Citroen C3, to be honest with you. It's not the sort of my recent one, the first one. That was not good when Mr. Coleman and I did one of those on No Budget Reviews, Austerity Edition. Um, Car Ravioli says the Citroen GS bi-rotor. Yes, they were very reliable, and Citroen did had to buy them back from the owners. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if that makes it the worst or just like a bit before its time, though. Um, Caravioli agrees with me about Citroen Pluriel. Troubley says good evening, and to everybody from the Lloyd Vehicle Consulting Collective. Um, Aidan Joyce says a Peugeot 407 was ugly. I drove a Peugeot 407 Coupe um, on the channel last year, and they're not actually that bad to drive. But when I driven have been chipped, and that was quite fast actually. Not the biggest seller compared to the 406 coupe. The 407 is very different looking. I definitely prefer the 406 coupe's looks to the 407. Mr. Adam Tom says the C3 Mark 1 and Pluriel are pretty terrible. Yes, you can all go on No Budget Reviews, Austerity Edition, and see exactly what Mr. Coleman and I thought of that car when we reviewed it in September 2020, and he paid £50 for the car. ST says, "What's the most underrated French car?" The 309. Possibly. I mean, the 309 is kind of similar to a 205. They even have the same doors and most of the same engines in them. Possibly. I've got a junk one here. So if that junk one comes up, I shall be removing that again. Don't appreciate junk comments on the live streams or any other time. John Edwards says 106s and Saxos racked alongside Corsas as the college student's choice. Yes, when I was at university, just after I passed my test, there were a number of people who had 106s and Saxos and Corsas and things like that. All those cars at that time were rusted, and some of them ended up in the hedge. And the Saxos and the Novas actually were still around when I was a student, and those were very heavily modified. The Harvard catalog, yes. Cara really says I go for the SM. Oh, I saw one of those recently. Actually, it's in the Shambolic Shuffles that are coming up next week. Mr. Saxby says my favourite car was French's the Mark 1 Laguna. Yes, some people like those. Mr. Adam Tom says I think the Xantia was underrated. Mine I still miss. Mr. Coleman and I were talking about this the other day, and one of the only Citroens I really, really want to drive is a Xantia Activa, which I would absolutely love to drive. They're very, very, very rare over here. I do know where there is one, but the owner wants a lot of money for it, so that's just the way it goes. Tripe Munger, I'm afraid, in answer to your question, there you go. Don't actually need to tell you anything else about that. Traboli says the Mark 1 Laguna community page, what such is about. That will become clear when the Shambolic Shuffles go live on Monday. It'll all become clear. ST says like a Xantia. Yep, I'm sure quite a few people do. Muddy Marvelous says we ordered an MG ZS from Summit Garage yesterday. My lady wife can't wait. It replaces a Dacia Duster and the comfort spec. Well, Summit Garage should be paying me, shouldn't they, for that kind of information? Because we have reviewed many cars there, and they obviously result in sales. So they should be paying me for that kind of exposure. Mark on Motoring said to Mr. Saxby, I love the Mark 1 Laguna designed a Mark 2 Privilege. Nicest car I've ever owned. Yes, the Mark IIs. They were very advanced at the time, but they have a lot of problems, principally electrical problems. Yeah, yeah. They're not that reliable in that respect. They're worth not much money anymore either. If you actually find one of those, it's doing quite well. ST says I like the early Lagunas. Carl Ravioli says Mark 1 Laguna, wafty French mini barge, preferably with the V6 and a beige leather interior. We don't even need to actually qualify that. Of course, it needs a V6 and a beige leather interior. Henry Hall 8538 says the 309 was meant to be a Talbot. Yes, it was supposed to be called the Talbot Arizona, replacing the Talbot Horizon. That was what it was supposed to be initially, but they decided to get rid of the Talbot Mark for passenger cars in '86, and then entirely on the vans 1994. Sorry, no, not Talbot. Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV. Mr. Waters says Xantis were great looking cars when they came out. I prefer the later ones, which are I think the only ones that in this country but was with the Activa. But they were designed really over time. I think they were Botoni design, is what I remember. ST says if you were a car from the 90s, what would it be? Austin Rover's not allowed. Austin Rover didn't exist by 1990. It disappeared as a company in 1988. So I think I'm allowed to say whatever I like, actually, in that respect, but I won't say anything for now. Richard House says, my Xantia was a great car. Can't mention the engine because... Right. Aidan Joyce says, was a 605 any good? I don't know. I've never driven a 605. Obviously, I'd like to try one, probably the V6 one. To try with V6 one, a manual. Although trying to get hold of one of those in this country these days might be a difficulty. Tripe Munger says in relation to what the forbidden fuel discussion was later on, yes, indeed, yes. Money Marvelous says, yes, they should. Let Summit know. Yes, yes. We have had plenty of exposure for Summit Garage over the last couple of years. I mean, one of the videos has had, I filmed it in about 15 minutes. It's had like, I don't know, 12, 15,000 views. What's this saying here? Rover Joe says, wouldn't mind getting off a metro at some point. I do like metros. I really want to drive a Rover metro. Now I've done two earlier metros, a Mark 1 Austin Metro and the Mark 2, which is just called a Metro because it's an 89. We didn't have the Austin badge by that stage. I'd like to drive a Rover Metro. But I really want to drive a nice one, so probably a GSI. Or just a GS, actually, it was because it's a carb engine initially, something like that. But I don't know when I'm going to find one because the most famous Rover Metro is Mr. Westby's from Twin Cam. His absolute base model that didn't even have a glove box. He had to fit one. So I don't know about that. We'll have to see. Henry Hull, 8538. What do you think of the 3-cylinder Peugeot 1.2 PureTech turbo engine? That's in all sorts of cars now. I think it's even in Vauxhalls, actually, that engine. It's much better than the Prince engine. It's much better than the Prince engine. We can actually talk about that engine. It was actually in that DS3 I reviewed recently on Sensible Secondhand Reviews. That was the non-turbo version. I have driven the turbo version. That's pretty good. Mr. Coleman might be able to comment on some issues with that one, but it's much, much better than the Prince engine. They're actually really reliable engines. Mr. Coleman himself says, sorry, I'm just sorting out restoration work for a friend's Alpha 6. Indeed. Yes, Mr. Coleman is a busy boy. Carl Ravioli says, here's a shout out for the worst French car. First generation 3008, very good reliability, awful styling, overdeep qualities. Most options with bitten fuel, and probably Prince engines too. So not good. Sir Depeche is referring to a t-shirt. Yes, we do have branded t-shirts. Fably says, Mr. Coleman is in the house. Mr. Coleman is indeed on the live stream this evening, although he's not in the same house as me, of course, today. John Edwards says, I'd like to get updates on the Sanyong takeover as I want to get more details. I will be doing a video that will probably come out towards the end of the month about that, because I do have, I think, enough information to make it. I've been waiting a year to make that video, but finally we've got some sort of more secure information about what's going to happen to Sanyong, and actually the news is okay. So I think we're going to be all right. Mr. David Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says the Peugeot 1007, which we're not allowed to call that because of legal reasons, from Dan Jack, who are the company that holds the rights to the James Bond film franchise. It has to be the 1007. Must have been a shout of being the worst car. Yes, possibly. Possibly, I don't know. I've never driven one of those. Carl Ravioli says it's a Rover 100, 114 with 1.4 K series, that of the GTI 16 valve. Thing about the 114 GSI is it actually got less equipment as it went on. Every year, it seems they're only made from like 95 to late 97. And they seem to de-spec them as they went along. They got rid of things like standard leather seats and standard airbags and things. They kept changing the spec of them. So it has to be one with decent spec if it's a 114 GSI. The 1.4 GSI Metro was actually, in some ways better specified than the 114. John Edwards says, I've seen Sanyong dealers registering brand new old stock and selling more than they retail when for production. Well, welcome to the the crazy world of secondhand car prices. That's absolutely insane at the moment. John Edwards talks about the brand new XLVs. The Sanyong Tivoli XLV actually went out of production about April 2020, I think, and they're still trying to sell some of those off. It's a massive shame because they're really, really good cars. The XLVs were generally even only sold in the top spec, and they're pretty good. There's lots of room in them. The looks aren't to everybody's taste, but I don't think they're that bad. Some people will just disagree with me about that, but they're not actually that bad. They're very good value for money, and you get a very, very long warranty. Sir Depeche Mode says Vizantra Activa was a brute of a car. Yes, I think only came in this country. Was it a 2-litre turbo engine? I think in some other countries they had a V6, but I think it was a 2-litre turbo over here only. Travelly saying hello to Mr. Coleman. DJB says he's watching and with the well, I don't think he's doing the Aldi cider, but I've had a conversation about Aldi cider with him this week, so I do know what it's talking about. Tripe Monger heartily recommends subscribing to the Rush Mechanic channel. And Mr. Coleman is edging ever closer to 1,000 subscribers. Mr. Coleman is indeed edging ever closer to 1,000 subscribers. And that when he gets to 1,000 subscribers, he'll be able to do his own live streams, which he's very excited about. Right. Dean Arch says, check out Carl's and Phil's Rover Crash in EastEnders. What sort of year was that? Not come across that before. Mr. Coleman says he's been extremely busy. Yes, Mr. Coleman is a very, very, very busy boy. Adam Tom says, my friend had a 1.1C early Rover Metro. Yes, that's the same specification Mr. Westby has. It was great fun. It saw his mother through many years of reliable motoring, and my friend and brother learned to drive in it. Yeah, Metros were very popular as driving school cars when they were sort of current. They were very popular, but despite the lack of power steering. But of course, I passed my test in a car with no power steering as well. It's just normal. Henry Hall 8538 says, I wonder how Peugeot like it being taken to task by a model name. Does that force Porsche to change their 901 to 911? Yeah, they pretty much put trademarks on all the numbers with a zero in the middle for, I don't know, a long time now. Carl Ravioli says, stupid question, Rover 620 Ti or Xantra Activa 2-litre turbo? They're both in the same ballpark at the time. I think the Xantia Activa would probably be a bit more expensive, to be honest. The 620 Ti's were sold about the same time. It sold until 99, but they were very heavily discounted towards the end. Very heavily, much so. The Activa, I'm not sure, was really. Rover Joe says a red Rover P60 Senders. I've got absolutely no idea, I'm afraid. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiasts and Trains TV says, my late grandfather had a Metro 1.1C in Henley Blue. Yeah, I know exactly the colour you mean. It's also popular on the R8s, 200s and 400s. Very basic, no stereo. Yeah, no stereo, no glove box. Having to put a stereo in it. Yeah, that was what people had to do back in the day. And it came with an aerial, but no stereo. Yeah, that's what they used to call with the Dacia Sanderos. Sort of radio preparation, I think, was the thing they called it. Mr. Coleman yesterday drove a French Citroen XM and always had a big liking for them, but we cannot talk about the engine, I'm afraid, in that particular XM. But I think the same owner's got one with a petrol V6 in it, so very nice. Sir Depeche, an A classic car, what would you have? Well, I've kind of already got a classic car, so I don't know. It depends how much of a budget you're giving me to actually run it, and whether I've got someone to actually fix it for me. There's lots of considerations to sort of take, consider when you think about buying a classic car. Traboli says the Nissan Bluebird ZX Turbo or Renault 21 Turbo from 1989. I know what Mr. Coleman would choose instantly. That's not really up for discussion. But in terms of me, I don't know. I haven't actually driven either of those, so I can't tell you because I haven't driven either of those. So there we go. That's good. Right. Do we have anything more that you'd like to discuss? The chat box seems to have gone very quiet for some reason. Mr. Coleman, yes, bluebirds are excellent. Yes, Mr. Coleman does like bluebirds. He was responsible for the destruction of many of them back in the day. Sir Depeche said he had two Xantias, a 2-litre LX, and the Activa. Yes, the Activa. Wow. I wonder how many of those are actually left. Oh, Trebly says, "Hit the like button." Well, thank you very much indeed, sir. That's very, very kind of you to suggest that. That's always does help. Rover Joe says, "What content will you be doing in 2022?" Goodness gracious me. That's not really something I can kind of break down. I mean, I've done channel updates. I mean, the best way to find out what I'm up to is actually to join the channel as a member, and then you get very vague vlogs every single week that tell you exactly what's been going on in the week. That's what they do. Um, you don't have to become a member and watch those if you don't want to. There's no obligation or anything, but they will be going out probably at least a month in advance of actually them being public on the channel. So that's why we do them, to give somebody information about what's going on. They're not very exciting. They are kind of rambling and sort of a bit rubbish, but then we have lots of rambling and slightly rubbish content on the channel. So there we go. That's just the way that it goes. Um, Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV asks, "What's your thoughts on the electric Bluebird?" I don't really know, to be perfectly honest, if I have many thoughts on that at all. I kind of like the Bluebird. I do have one lined up to do at some point quite soon. I've been trying to review it for about 16 months, I think it is. It hasn't quite sort of worked out. Um, I don't know. It's an electric Bluebird with the powertrain from a Leaf. I don't know. I don't really know what much else to say, really. Yeah, don't know. Carl Ravielli asks, Citroen AX GT, Renault Clio, 16 valve, both 92 of every option. Renault Clio Baccara, I'm afraid. Neither. Rubbish Mechanic, I think I've raced 39 Bluebirds. Yes, sir. The ones you wanted were the saloons or the estates, I believe. Henry Hole 8538 enjoyed the Rover P6 Hammer channel recently. Yes, I quite enjoyed that. Because it was an auto, I didn't have to worry about ruining a gearbox, which is always a high possibility when I drive old cars about ruining the gearboxes. So that was good. Um, Mr. Coleman says, "I'm looking forward to showing the new fleet member something that's not going to be broken for a year." Yes, indeed. The Alpha 90 was laid up sort of in January 2021 after an unfortunate incident, and that still hasn't been fixed, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. Richard Howlett says, "I always liked mid 1980s Audis. I own two and also had a 1989 Audi 100. Very nice. Yes. The five-cylinder Audis are, I think, one of Mr. Coleman's favourite sort of 1980s German cars. Aidan Joyce Electric Bluebird is pretty cool. I suppose it is. A lot of these things, people ask me questions. I think someone asked me about the What do you think of the Ineos Grenadier? I don't really know. I've not driven one or anything. I mean, it's sort of looks a bit like an old Defender with some modern engines in it and eventually electric powertrain. What more is there to say? It's not exactly the sort of thing I'd normally feature on the channel. If you see what I mean. Mm. Right. Do we have any? Oh, here we go. John Edwards. Any chance of getting hold of electric Corando? The electric Corando has not actually been officially launched in this country yet. I have seen a video on it, and sometimes it's hard, it's easy to get hold of stuff. Sometimes it's not. With that one, I honestly don't have a clue. Um, I don't have a clue. Sorry. Don't know. Trevor Lee, thank you very much indeed, sir. He has donated £5 for a super chat, which will mean that his message remains on the screen. That's very kind of you, sir. I very much appreciate it. It all sort of helps. I actually had the accommodation for a video the series of videos I made last week, paid for by donations from channel viewers for one night, which is very nice. So that's very beneficial. We can go and do more exciting things if that happens. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, "I never realised it was that long ago with Mr. Coleman's 90 being laid up." It's something I don't really want to get into because it's not really for me to tell the story. But yeah, it has been quite a while, and I think it's been a bit of a difficult process for Mr. Coleman. Um, Yes, Mr. Coleman says Richard Howlett, but his brother owns an Audi 200 Avant Quattro. Those are very, very rare cars, actually. Those I saw one at the Retro Rides Weekender back in May last year. I think it's the first one I'd ever seen. Extraordinary cars, really amazing, actually. Those. Um, I think it's a 5-cylinder longitudinal engine in those, and four-wheel drive, of course. Um, what see here? Yes, I think Richard Howlett's talking about the Audi 200 Quattro. If you watch the Living Daylights, then you'll see a couple of Audi 200s. There's one that's used in the scene set in um, what was Czechoslovakia, although that was filmed in Austria, and there's also one that was filmed in Tangiers as well. There's a saloon, if any of you have the saloon one is really nice to look at. It's a lovely car. I like that one in particular. Chambers 101 says, "Good evening, sir. Good evening to you as well, and everyone else who is on the channel." Mm, that's nice. Right. I'm going to ask all of you who are on the live stream at the moment a question. How often would you like to see the live streams happen? Would you like to see them sort of weekly, monthly, or maybe you don't want to see them again? So never. I'll ask you all to put your answers in the comment section below, because we've done quite a few of them recently. I think this is the um, how many have we done in a row? Fourth one in a row, actually, every weekend. Mr. Coleman says weekly. I think he enjoys that. Rojo says weekly or monthly. Yeah, it does depend about when I have time. Yeah, exactly. Dry Boat says it's up to me. Well, it's very kind, sir. You're very generous. Yes, I don't know. Mr. G goes in the middle, and so does Mr. Adam Toms. Once a fortnight. Okay, well that's interesting. Yeah, it does depend what else I'm actually doing. Actually, if I'm doing a job or something, um, then it might not be possible. If I'm doing some filming or something, I don't know. Well, that's quite a range of opinions here. So Caravielli says weekly, talking about shenanigans of a week. Mr. Waters says fortnightly. DG says weekly. Mighty Cat Mods, it's a very good channel name. Weekly, we good. As long as we keep enjoying it, so are we. I have noticed we had quite a few more people on the live stream last week, so maybe not another one next week in that case. Henry Hall 8538 says, "What's the first classic car show of the year?" It was good seeing it the Friday at the NEC show. Monthly live chat with less pressure. Well, I don't. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. The London Classic Car Show, I haven't seen any information about it, so I presume that's not happening. Usually, it happens in February. So I don't know about when that's going to happen. The first one I know for definite in terms of a show would be the restoration show at the NEC in March, which I do need to actually book myself in for. I know everyone will now say, yes, do you know that Mr. Seabrook is going and Mr. Richardson is going and probably Steph Model Classic? Yes, I've seen all that sort of stuff. We won't be going on having a stand or things like that, because I don't really need to do that at the moment. So I'll just be buying a normal ticket and shuffling around myself and trying not to trip over, which I did very nearly trip over a Great British Car Journey in part 2. I was so close to falling over, I can't tell you. Richard Howlett says weekly for the live streams. Thank you, sir. Mr. Coleman says, however I feel, we appreciate seeing you do speak on the phone. Yes, Mr. Coleman, I had a lengthy discussion about Sierras and other things like that last night. Mr. Adam Tom says, unfortunately, he's got to go, but a good evening and all the to you and all viewers. Good evening to you as well, sir. Frabber Lee says, weekly solo follow Mr. Coleman. The thing is, I don't actually see Mr. Coleman um, that often. I haven't seen Mr. Coleman for quite a while now. I think it's over a month. So when I actually see Mr. Coleman, then we will do them, but it's not possible to do them on that sort of regular basis, unfortunately. John Edwards says, return to the lockdown quiz element. Those quizzes took an awfully long time to put together. And I got a lot of complaints that they were too hard. So I don't quite know what to say about that, really. And hopefully we're never having any lockdowns ever again, because lockdowns are pretty rubbish for most of us, I must say. So there we go. Mr. Coleman says, good night to Mr. Adam Toms. Rover Joe says, I want to go to a restoration show in March. I think many of us want to go to that show. It should be an interesting one. Sir Depeche Mode says, I'm more popular than Boris Johnson. I don't think that's true, sir. You know, he got millions of votes at the 2019 election, and I got none. So there we go. Chambers 101 says, I do enjoy the shambolic shuffles. I don't understand really why so many people like them, because they are just literally kind of wandering around with a phone and mumbling, getting stuff wrong and trying not to trip over. They're barely edited at all. So I don't understand, but I will continue to make them if you want to see them. And I filmed 3 parts of one this week, which you'll be seeing on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. So I do hope you enjoy them. As you ever get bored? Well, we all get bored, don't we? At some point. It depends, what context that's in. Tripe Munger says, fortnightly to the live streams, whatever works best. Thank you, sir. Ryden says, good evening. Bad Book says, hardly a compliment. Oh, yes. I don't know what it's sort of about, really. Mr. Coleman says, have a nice for lockdown person, really need a rest. Mr. Coleman has been a very busy boy over the last few months, and he certainly deserves a rest. Rover Joe says it's getting there to the show. It's quite distant. Well, it's not, to be honest. That place is like well over 2 hours drive from me, so it's not close or anything like that. I don't know exactly how long it takes you to get to Birmingham, sir. I imagine probably about the same or a little bit longer, but it's just one of these things. Roger Cat says, good evening to Mark from Bad Books. Excellent. British Howard is laughing. Chambers 101 says that's the beauty of it. I imagine he's kind of talking about the shambolic shuffles. Again, just that's what they are. They are totally shambolic. The part 1 of the one I filmed this week, I actually end up going the wrong. I end up stuck outside a door, and I have to get back. I've gone through accidentally, and I couldn't get back in. It's absolutely, absolutely kind of crazy. It's really quite rubbish. John Edwards says, shambolic shuffle around Downing Street's part of your work function. Very funny, sir. Sir Depeche Mode says to Mark from Bad Books, and of admiration. That's very kind of you to say such, sir. I remember, yes, many times when you have said similar things. Bad Books says, good evening to Mr. Coleman. Sir Depeche Mode says, but, don't know about what. ST says, it's such a competition between the different channels. Ian Seabrook, Assassin's Twin Cam. Not really, no. I've done a lot of collaborations with a lot of channels. My first collaboration was about 3 years ago with James Martin from JM on Cars, and he reviewed my Lady Wife's MG3. I mean, even then, I had a channel of 200 subscribers if I was lucky. He's got like 180,000 subscribers now, and I just did a collaboration yesterday with Driven Phone 2027 channel where we just exchanged cars for about half an hour, and YouTube's a collaborative thing. It's supposed to be something where you kind of help each other out, and that's one of the reasons why I think Mr. Coleman and I quite enjoy it. In particular, I can't really speak for anybody else, but really, if anything, collaborating with other people, helps both your channels out. Really, would we like our channels to be, larger and bringing in more revenue, so we, could quit normal jobs? Then, well, possibly, but um, it's much better, really, to think of it as trying to build each other up as opposed to actually trying to take somebody down or something. I think the idea that actually you kind of are there to sort of try to steal audience from someone and try to strip viewers away from them is a really bad one. Um, as Sir Depeche Mode says, we're all friends on this channel, and long may it continue. Rover Joe says, I remember the last time I went to the NEC, the cost of parking was crazy. Yeah, the cost of parking was appalling. Yeah, I remember that very well, and also, um, uh, I took ages to get out of there. Like, on one occasion, I walked about a mile and a half back to the car in dark, and then I realised that I couldn't go out the normal way. I had to like be diverted in a completely opposite direction, from where I was going. So it was absolutely terrible. This time, Mr. Coleman made a very good suggestion, and it's a very strange suggestion, possibly to some of you. But he said, "Why don't you just get a hotel near a station on the line that goes into the NEC, and then get the train to the show?" And it makes so much sense. I think it's possibly much cheaper to pay for the train to get there and back than it is to actually park, and then you have to pay for the drive, petrol in the car and things like that. So yeah, it, um, it's actually not a bad idea. I think the NEC themselves would encourage use of public transport. We love cars. That's why the channels exist. But sometimes public transport can actually be quite a good thing. Certainly, my sister would say that because she's an environmentalist. So there we go. Richard Howlett says, I'll be at the NEC in March. Thank you, sir. That's great. Bad Books agrees with the silly prices of parking at NEC. ST says, you've got a great channel, agree with compilation. For some reason, people really like the videos Alex Assets and I have been doing. I've actually got more cars to review that belong to her and her family. I've got more to do. So we will be doing more, and I've got more to provide her with for her channel as well. So far, it's working out quite well. The last two we did this week have worked out quite well. They're not quite done as well as possibly some of the other ones, like the P4 Milagro, but that might increase in time. Brother Joe says, like to do a collaboration. Well, particularly if you get that Honda Civic running the VTI, I will be very happy to drive that. Travelly says, do you think Mr. Richardson regrets his swap upon exchange for the Rover convertible Freelander? I don't know about that, actually, because he's very, very clear about what his motivation was in buying that car in May 2020. He didn't intend to keep it. Likewise, the Volvo, he never intended to keep it. It was bought a few months before that for a specific purpose. And the Volvo ended up staying because I think his son really likes it or something. The Rover is gone because it just sitting there taking up space. There never was the intention to keep it. So it wasn't how he planned to do it. But I do know the chap who's actually bought that car. He's quite well known, and some of his cars have actually appeared on the channel. I'm not going to say who it is or anything, but he's provided some cars for the channel in the past as well, and he's a great chap, actually. I think it just helped get rid of a car that was just kind of taking up space in someone else's garage, and selling a convertible in winter is quite difficult anyway, as many of you know. So it just happened to be a handy thing for him to get back to the place where they met halfway, I think Grantham. Yeah, I don't know what he plans to do with it. I haven't got a clue. I can't really talk about it anyway because of the engine in it. Henry Hall 8538 says, collaborators help everyone. They introduce viewers to new channels. Yeah, that's exactly what Amber and I were talking about yesterday, about the fact that we have quite a different audience, I think, Amber and I. But actually, I quite enjoy driving her car, and she quite enjoyed driving mine. So hopefully, there'll be a bit of a shared interest there when reviews go up next week of the two cars that we swapped over. Mr. Coleman says YouTube is great. It's a bit of a break from the norm. A personal note, great to meet and chat with other people sharing all interest, a bit of mechanical help. Mr. Coleman has an enormous amount of mechanical knowledge. Mr. Richardson once described him when we were at the NEC as one of the best mechanics in that entire room, and there were literally hundreds of thousands of people in there, many of whom I'm sure are mechanics. So his words, not mine. And of course, he's a busy boy. He doesn't get much time, as he said. John Edwards says, collaborated on YouTube, wonderful to see a tangible challenge, and it gained many channels some extra viewers having great fun. It did, yeah. I got quite a few subscribers from that challenge alone. It was a very successful series of videos I did on it, and I wasn't monetized at the time or anything, so it didn't get me, loads of money or anything. It just got me more channel viewers and some interesting comments and things like that. And we do hope to do one of those again at some point this year. In fact, there's a couple of cars that I've sort of been looking at and maybe sort of getting them. But the thing is that it can get very expensive if you don't have the money to sort of buy a car, So you actually have to be able to buy a car first, and that's something we can't quite afford at the moment. So it'll happen, but all in good time, I think. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, I was looking at the restoration show and fly down and get the train. Yeah, it might be a good idea because driving down from Scotland is very expensive. Mark from Bad Book says you're going to go green laning in the Land Rover Lightweight that Alex actually owns. I don't know about that. I'm not actually sure. She's kind of make me drive that at some stage. It might not go very well, but yes, it's shambolic and everything, but I have to see. Chambers 101 asks about the Freelander that Mr. Richardson has purchased, and all I can say to that is this. So there we go. Right. Mark from Bad Books says to Mr. Coleman, YouTube is great. I never get time to watch television now. Yes, kind of the same. I don't watch shit or television anymore. Rover Joe says, I'll see how the Honda does. Yeah, okay, that's great. I'm talking to Steph Moldova Classic. I just got to sort something out for a motorist. Well, yeah, I mean, she works there and she's the sort of PR person, I think. So she's quite handy in terms of getting that place for meetings and all kinds of things like that. Have they not got a workshop at the motorist at the moment? That's interesting. Miss Captain Reed from Life on Cars says hello. Yes, he's the owner of a very, very nice MGTF that I reviewed on my channel last July. It's a TF115 from 2004. It's a concourse, that car. Mr. Richard Howlett says, I watch 10 times more YouTube and television. Yeah, that sounds like a sort of typical thing. Mr. Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, I agree. I spend a lot of time watching YouTube and television. Yep. We don't even have an aerial plugged in this house. We have a very old television that dates from 2006. And that's what we have. That's just all we have. Chambers 101 says, that'll be fun. I had riding lightweight round a large quarry. That's interesting. Mr. Coleman says South Main Auto is one of his favorite channels. Yes, Eric from South Main Auto has a very, very big channel. If you're into kind of particularly repairs on kind of American cars and ones that are in the sort of Rust Belt, the sort of the states where they have a lot of salt on the roads in the winter and it gets very cold, it's very useful to watch that. Ali Morrison says, why do we talk about them on my channel? I talked about this in the 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to talk about it again. If you want to hear about it, There's two ways of doing it. One, there is a video on the channel which says something like, "Why don't we talk about diesels on the channel?" And it's the thumbnail is of my old Chevrolet Cruze, and just watch the live stream for about 45 minutes in from 2 weeks ago. I'm not talking about that anymore. Um, Thank you for removing your message, because there's no point, because I've talked about it quite a lot actually as to why I get a bit fed up of it, to be honest. Conrad Violi says, "So do I. There's something to watch on YouTube, new or old, especially on my channel." Thank you, sir. Captain Reed asked when he was reviewing MGB. I really hope to do his MGB back in July, but it didn't quite work out. I really hope so soon, sir. I would love to drive it, but particularly as we're going for older cars now on sensible second-hand classics. I need to get my hands on your car, because it's a really, really nice example. Your MGB, actually, it's lovely in one of my favourite colours. Mark from Bad Book says, "You've driven far more cars, majority of us." Yeah, I've driven a lot of cars. I get a bit annoyed sometimes with people sort of kind of telling me that um, like, you don't know what you're talking about certain things. But I drive a lot of cars that, I'm able to compare different types of car. So the Hyundai Getz that I drove yesterday, I've driven so many competing cars on the channel. I've driven Rover 25s, Ford Fiestas, Corsa Cs, even the Proton Savvy. That was a car that was marketed against the Hyundai Getz for a while. So I've got quite a good idea, even though I don't necessarily drive the cars for too long. Sometimes I've owned stuff like Polos and Corsa Cs and things like that. So I kind of do have an idea sort of what's on the market and what they're like. But of course, with anything, it's very difficult with a car, and particularly on no budget reviews, to say whether you should buy one of these over something else, because when I recommend cars to a client, very often it's what's in the best condition with an older car, rather than like, oh, like you should definitely buy one of these over something else, because the condition of the examples goes all over the place at that sort of age and price. So they're not really, sort of guides as to like, you definitely, with your budget of £1,000, need to go and buy a knackered Fiesta over a really nice condition Corsa C. That's not really how it works. But I have driven a lot of cars, and I have quite a lot of knowledge from just doing my job as well, finding cars for clients. So I hope you sort of all appreciate that. I'm not an expert in everything. I'm definitely not. Completely not. I really am not. I mean, if I have times when I refer to people like Mr. Coleman to assist me with certain things, but I have driven a lot of cars, I can tell you that. And because I'm doing at least 3 reviews a week, most of the time, there's a lot of reviews out there on the channel for people to see if they want to. Travelly says, landline, phone, and Sky are two useless things nowadays. We don't have a landline in the house anymore. We actually have a 4G router. We don't have a wired router in the house anymore. We have a 4G one, and it works about 3 or 4 times the speed of your wired router we used to have, and it's much cheaper than the previous one was as well. So we don't have Sky or anything either. One of the channels I'd watch sometimes is Chili John Carney, which is a TV license kind of anti-campaign channel, and he's very interesting about the fact that people don't really get much out of paying a television license. So cancel your license if you want to, and you can still do most of the things you need to. That's a very interesting point as well. Andy G says, "You got into Salvage Rebuilds and Chops Garage." Yeah, I watch Salvage Rebuilds and Chops Garage as well. I do want to actually go and visit James from Chops Garage at some point. He lives in North Devon, and I have been in contact with him actually about going to see him, because a lot of the cars that he actually has on the channel, I've either reviewed them myself. I mean, like Kia Ceed, Seat Ibiza, Hyundai i10 Mark 1, Hyundai i20 Mark 1. I've reviewed a lot of those, but he also gets other stuff in there as well. And so I'm hoping at some point this year to go and see him and maybe do some kind of collaboration with him. Actually, he's like a nice chap. Bad Book says recommend South also main to me. It's quite an eye opener. Yeah, it's a good channel. Rubbish Mechanic says to Bad Books, yeah, again, this is about South Main Auto. It's a very good channel. Yeah, I've watched it. I've watched a few of his Eric's videos, and they're quite good. Car Review says thing makes me chuckle because people say, "Oh, you've no clue how X drives," and then depends your experience of X. And in no experience of said car. That's exactly. People tell me, "Oh, Sanyongs are terrible. They're terrible cars." Like, well, I've got one and I've had it for, I don't know, over 18 months now, and I drive it all the time. If you're going to say the car's terrible, I don't really mind, but at least have a go in one and see what you think. You don't have to like everything, but just at least actually have some experience. So Depeche Mode to Salvage Rebuild UK is a great channel. I find Rob from Salvage Rebuild UK a very, very funny person. I don't know if it's deliberate or something, but I find him just absolutely hilarious. Robert Joe says we got rid of our landlines. It's costing us. Didn't even use them. We used to use mobile phones. Yeah, that's it. That's a good thing, sir. Mark from Bad Book says when the Hyundai Getz came out, I had a hire car Getz in Holland with 3 burly salesmen in the back seat, moaning how narrow it was. They're not really designed for 3 burly salesmen in the back of Hyundai Getz. Henry Hall 8538 says, have you driven in a Fiat 850 coupe? Wow. Yes, I know those. Would like to know how what drive like. Again, it depends if I can actually get hold of something like that. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have a go in one, but no, I'm not driven one. Soda Patch Mode says Chili Con Carne is a great channel. Watching it earlier, yes. Particularly if you want to know about information about television license and the fact that BBC is biased and all kind of stuff like that, then have a look at that channel. And he also says the license fee has been frozen for the last 2 years. It has indeed. Mr. Commons is a must go. Supper is ready. Good evening, everybody. Good night, perhaps. David Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV says, good night, Mr. Coleman. Carlo says, good night, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman says, see you, Mr. Waters. Yes, because we're on 57 minutes, I think we'll call that a day. We've covered a lot of stuff. I didn't realize we were going to go talking about South Main Auto and Chili John Carne, but yeah, they're 2 really good channels. I'm not a regular viewer of South Main Auto because a lot of it's just sort of fixing cars, and I don't have a lot of experience with most of the models that they have in there. But certainly Chili John Carne, I think is a really helpful channel to understand certain things about. You could potentially save £159 a year just by making some small changes, and how to deal with somebody knocks on your door from television license people. But anyway, thank you very much indeed for watching this slightly less than professional live stream 21. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. I don't know exactly when we'll be doing the next one, possibly in 2 weeks or something like that. If you want to become a channel member, then there's a join link below as well. But don't feel any obligation to do that. The fact that you're actually watching the video in the first place is the most important thing, of course. Mr. Waters says, I enjoy Alex Belfield as well. I don't think I've come across that channel before. Mr. G has also hit the like button, which is appreciated. And my resident channel, Celebrity Sir Depeche Mode says, good night, sir. And with that, I shall bid you farewell.